It's okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Paul, and I'm security researcher at Talos Cisco, the threat intelligence part of Cisco. And I work on malware research and malware hunting, and I will do this talk in Froglish. I will do my best to have the best French accent. So, why I'm here, I'm going to speak about WinDBG, just for information. Who knows WinDBG in the room? Not so bad. And one thing is I have to deal a lot with .NET binary more and more, and a lot of PowerShell script. And PowerShell is in fact developed in .NET, use the .NET API. And due to this quantity of different sample I have to analyze every day, I started to try to make some automatic stuff, and I was trying to get automatically information from sandbox, virtual machine, or stuff like that. And I decided to start to understand how to debug .NET with WinDBG to be able to automatically extract, I don't know, configuration or stuff like that. And I will present you how you can do that. So first thing first, how you say WinDBG. So I create my own survey, and I took the survey from someone else, and the results are exactly the opposite. So I don't know if I must say WinDBG or WinDebug or WinDbag. I don't know. So I will say WinDBG, except if someone of the room is really, really strict with this fact, and one I say WinDebug. But just for people that don't really know where we are just here. WinDebug or WinDBG is a Microsoft debugger. It's free. You can get it for free. And one of the biggest advantage is it perfectly knows Windows system. You have PDB support. You can have a lot of internal information from Windows on this application. And it supports 32 and 64 bits. You have the same command for both architecture. It works well. It's used by Microsoft. The thing is, the user interface is not really user-friendly. You will see, I will make some demo today. You will see the syntax is pretty weird. And they don't really have a natively scripting language. So today it's a little bit different. They're working on new version, and they perfectly support JavaScript. So you can develop in JavaScript inside of WinDBG. But in my case, I decided to develop in Python with an extension, because I don't like JavaScript, basically. So I got two first slides about only few comments I will use for the demo, simply for people to understand what I will do. The first thing is every command starting with D, something, D, B, D, A, etc. The D is for display. The purpose is simply to display data in memory. For example, you have DB that show you hexadecimal value and strings. ASCII characters on the right, and after the DB you have the address you want to see. So it's nothing more. The second letter is simply the output. I want ASCII, I want hexadecimal and ASCII, etc. I will use sometime B for breakpoint. Same thing, everything starts by B. You've got BP for breakpoint, BL for to list, breakpoint, BD to disable, enable, etc. So the syntax is more or less always the same. B followed by what you want to do with breakpoint. Something a little bit specific is on WinDBG you can breakpoint on event. So the last line, the A6E, is a breakpoint when the library in my case, will be loaded. So it's really powerful because typically, imagine you work on a malware that is loaded inside of Explorer, for example. You can say to WinDBG, I want to breakpoint when my malware will be loaded. And you simply wait this time. If you work on kernel space, you can say, I want to breakpoint when this driver will be loaded. Exactly the same command. So, you can write mems, so take stuff from memory and write on the file to log it. Nothing really awesome. You can list loaded module, list exported function, etc. the link here, you've got a documentation. It's not the official documentation. The official documentation is too big, but it's a really nice cheat sheet to have basically all the most important commands. Normally with this documentation, you have 90% of what you did for normal daily work. So for the moment, I only speak about unmanaged code, so C, C++, this kind of stuff. But you have an extension that probably nobody uses except me, is SOS. And it includes the support of .NET debugging inside of WinDBG. So when you load this extension, you have additional command. And this command only work on .NET application. And it's at this time it becomes really interesting. Typically, if in .NET you have assembly load function, you can breakpoint when assembly load will be loaded in WinDBG. So it will breakpoint on specific .NET function inside of WinDBG. It's not C API or C++ API. It's really .NET, and it's really interesting. The good point is on .NET you can have the same function with different kind of argument, different type of argument. So one function can be in fact be 5 different functions, because it's the same name for the developers, but depending the number of arguments, the type of argument, etc., it will execute a different one from assembly point of view. And it's natively support this thing. Typically, assembly loads, you have 8 different assembly loads in .NET. Developers don't realize they have 8 different, but in fact you have 8 different, and when you use BPMD, it will automatically breakpoint on the 8 APIs for you. It's really nice. If you are used to debug C or C++ application, you often play with stack to get arguments, for example, and stuff like that. And you have the same kind of thing on .NET application, and you can use CLR stack minus P in this case, and you will have the stack of a .NET application. Typically, I will use it to get arguments. To get the first argument, the second argument, they will be on the .NET stack. You can dump an object, a .NET object, and when you dump the .NET object, the screenshot is really crappy, I will show you. You can have every attribute of an object. So if the first attribute is file name and is a strings, you can get it directly from WinDBG. You have the complete documentation of SOS. I will use, I think, 3 functions of the extension, but you have a lot of, you can monitor a memory leak on .NET application, etc., etc. It's really powerful, not only for malware reverser, but for developers, simply. So, I think the best thing is to show you some example how I use WinDBG for .NET application, and the first thing is PowerShell. So, I start another server on Twitter. Who in the room use WinDBG to debug PowerShell script? Yeah, nobody. The thing is, normally, if you have to deal with PowerShell, you simply read the PowerShell and it's over. You read the code, you know what it performs. But imagine I give you 10,000 of script with more or less the same behavior, but not exactly the same obfuscation or not exactly the same compression or encryption, whatever. I don't think you will open on Notepad 10,000 tab to read PowerShell. So in this case, I decided to make automatization thanks to WinDBG, execute on VM every script and get the information I want to get. Why .NET? Because I explained PowerShell, in fact, use the .NET framework behind. So it's a really weird stuff. If you reverse it, it's developed in C++, but it's a wrapper to .NET framework. So in background, they use .NET. Yeah. If you are used to analyze malware PowerShell script, you can see a lot of usage of unmanaged code. Typically, you can use virtual by making some tricks like on the screenshot. In this case, it's no big deal. You can simply breakpoint on virtual and you get the data. It's not really what I want to talk about, but you can do it. In my case, I want, for example, to work on start process. Imagine I've got 10,000 scripts that finish always by start process. I want to log a start process argument. I can do it. So I hope it won't finish in failcon, but everything is possible. Yeah, it's not a good application. A wrong reflex. Yeah. I always launch IDA. I'm gonna increase the font for you. So I can directly attach my debugger to PowerShell here. Yeah, at this time I'm attached to PowerShell application. Typically I cannot do anything. The application is stopped by the debugger. And at this time I'm gonna load the SOS extension. So I'm gonna load the support of .NET command inside of my debugger, so it works. And I'm going to breakpoint on process start API. So the first argument is a Windows DLL where the function is located. It's always documented when you go on MSDN documentation of process start. It will, at the bottom of the page, you will have the DLL where is located this function. Yeah, something really good with WinDBG, you must sometimes execute command twice. Yeah, it's really fun. Generally, when I was a child, my parents said to me, don't do twice the same things, it's stupid. No, it's not. So at this time, you can see 6 methods was detected. So you have 6 different process start on .NET, depending of if you put a strings, 2 strings, if you put an array or whatever. And this time, I put go. So the application is started. Now I can do something on it. And I do my start-process calc.exe. And here you can see debugger stopped because start process was executed at this time. Yeah, I'm lazy, I copy paste. And at this time, I can show the stack. So show different argument executed function, etc. So it's pretty big. But the first one, yep, here. Yeah, the first one, you've got start process, and the argument is a process start info structure. If you're lazy like me, you click. And here you've got the structures, and you've got all the attributes of these specific structures. So first one is file name, you click. And you've got a strings.NET object, and here you've got the calc.exe, so exactly the argument I put. But you can have additional information. For example, you've got directory. So on this structure, you must set a directory. You can see I simply start calc.exe. I didn't put any directory. But by default, if you execute something, it's executed from your home. So in this case, you've got users Lucifer, it's my home. And yeah, at this time you are able to get information about structures put in the argument of this .NET application. So basically the dump obj is what is performed when you click in WinDBG. For people that really like assembly, you can get information from register. You can get the value in the register here. And finally, perform display what is at this address. Oops. And yeah, you directly get the string. So you can really make some automatization without clicking and without passing output in WinDBG, because WinDBG is not really easy to pass. You can see you've got stuff everywhere. So yeah. It's something you can do. Another example, I won't do it because it's more or less the same thing. You can imagine you have a malware that download executable or whatever on a website using always the same API, download file, typically a lot of ransomware download payload on the internet and use PowerShell script and use download file. But you have different kind of obfuscation, so you cannot really easily get the URL. But in this case, you can simply breakpoint on download file, and you've got the information. It breakpoint. Yeah, you can directly get in registry the first argument. In my case, it's http://blog.dalosintelligence.com. And the second argument is where the file will be stored on the machine. And at this time, you can, for example, download it, put it on a shell directory, and get all the downloaded sample automatically. It's not really complicated, and it works. Yeah, you've got a screenshot of the full automate process where I got the URL and the file name and the file execution. It's typically what ransomware did when they used PowerShell script to execute the second stage. So it's okay for PowerShell. And as I said, it's .NET, and I don't know for you, but I receive more and more crappy .NET packer. And it simply unpacks stuff, decrypt, dexor, decompress, or do what you want. And after you got a second PE file, and this PE file is loaded in memory and executed. It's more or less always the same philosophy, but not exactly the same obfuscation technique and stuff like that. Here, it's an example. It's I don't remember. I think it's a remote administration tools that use strings in looks like China attribution. No, and in this case, a XOR is performed here between two arrays, and it decodes the data after he has a new P file, a new binary, and use assembly load to load it in memory and execute it. I found another sample that did exactly the same thing, but instead of using XOR techniques, he used encryption. Yes, encryption. But the philosophy is the same. Doing something with data, at the end you have a P file, and it's loaded in memory thanks to assembly load. For people that are not used to play with .NET, assembly load is a really easy function. You put a byte array in argument. This byte array is a MZ, a P file, a Windows binary, and it's loaded in memory and executed. It's really easy, really straightforward. So you can do the same thing. I can show you. So here is a sample with Chinese language. You've got the XOR here. Here is the XOR function. And later you've got the assembly load here of the decoded data. So as I don't want to execute, just one thing. WinDBG is a debugger. We have some people that call us because they execute my script on their real machine and they encrypted the file system. So no, it's not an emulator, it's a debugger. So don't execute stuff on your machine. But for the demo, I create a simple packers that do more or less the same thing. I got my malicious payload. It's open hello world. I did a base 64 on it here. And after, the packer takes these strings, decode in base 64, and performs the assembly load somewhere later, I don't know. He performs the assembly load on this decoded data. So it's more exactly what the malware do, but I rewrite it to be sure it's safe for my machine. So let's play with it. No. Just gonna increase font. So execute my packed sample here. So WinDBG start to execute the sample and stopped at the beginning of the execution. Normally at this time I must load the SOS extension. But the thing is, WinDBG breaks so early that the .NET framework is not loaded in the process. So as the .NET framework is not loaded in the process, if I try to load SOS extension, it will fail because WinDBG will say, it's not a .NET application, you don't have the .NET framework. So you must put the first breakpoint when the framework is loaded, and at this time you are able to load the .NET extension. So I put a breakpoint when .NET framework is loaded. I execute, now .NET is loaded. And at this time I'm able to put the breakpoint. I'm able to load SOS extension. So same thing than previously. I breakpoint when assembly load is executed. Twice, like previously. And I start the execution of my sample. It's stopped, so it's stopped at the load assembly load execution. I display the stack exactly as previously. You got assembly load here, byte array. You can click on it, and at this time you can see it's a MZ. This program cannot be blah blah blah. So it's the beginning of the PE file, the decompress, and base 64 in my case, but you have the PE file directly at this time. Oops. Oh. Yeah, it's what I showed to you. You can directly get it from a registry and dump it on file. Yeah, it's probably small for you, but it's a script that automatically unpack a lot of similar sample on a virtual machine. So all the demo are really manual. You must put breakpoint and go and stop and extra. So we created a small Python script. You need Python extension. So by default, WinDBG does not support Python. So you need to add a Python extension. It's PYKD. It's open source, but you have precompiled binary. It's really easy to use. You must take our script, of course. It's available on Cisco Talos GitHub. And what is the purpose of the script? You put some configuration. You say, I want to monitor, I don't know, download file. I want to monitor process create. I want to monitor load assembly. And for each function you set, it will, if it's start process typically, it will log for you every strings and integer. If it's assembly load, he will dump on file every byte array in argument of assembly load, etc. And the output will be in JSON if you need to parse it for project or what you want. Here is an example of output. So it's for a start process. You have the function name here. It will show you each argument. For example, the first argument, number 0, is file name, and you have the strings calc.exe. The second argument is the argument of the start process. In this case, it's a string and it's empty, etc., etc. The third one is a directory, and you can get the directory. So each time one of the attributes is a string or an integer, it will show you the information. So, if I start a new PowerShell and attach my debugger on it, just switch. So, first task. I load SOS extension. Always the same thing. I want .NET support. I load PKD. So I load Python support. And finally, I execute my script. Yeah, so in my case, I can show you the script. It's here. I decided to breakpoint on start process, download file, assembly load. So exactly the 3D demo I show you. It automatically put all the breakpoint on this API. And I execute calc.exe, so it's a little bit longer because everything is logged. And here, if I this breakpoint is start process and process start info structures, and you've got calc.exe, empty strings, my home, extra. So everything will be automatically displayed in JSON, and you've got a special flag named byte array here, and if it's a byte array, it will be dumped on the file, on your file system. So you can directly get dropped a file like that really, really easily. So, yeah. My goal was really to show you that sometimes using really weird application, because nobody thinks WinDBG when you speak about PowerShell script, because it more or less doesn't make any sense for individual analysis. But if you need for any reason to scale on hundreds or thousands investigation, it can be really powerful to automate a lot of tasks. WinDBG perfectly supports .NET application, so each time you have an update on .NET, etc., it works perfectly on WinDBG. It's not a big issue. Today, it's really hard to develop on WinDBG and perform script. I decided to use Python support, but you have a JavaScript support, so you can make a lot of stuff in JavaScript if it's easier for you. I had some question. I will reply to the question before you ask. The first thing, a lot of people say to me, does it work in JavaScript? So no, it does not work in JavaScript, because the JavaScript script on Windows does not use the .NET framework. So in this case, it's pure C, C++. But I create a blog post on Talos where I explain how you can do exactly the same on JavaScript application. So how to breakpoint on eval typically, how breakpoint on specific download file and stuff like that API. How the arguments are stored on inside of the JavaScript interpreter, etc. So it's not so easy because it does not use .NET framework, but you can do it. I make some example of automatization on JavaScript script, so you can do the same. It's simply a new project, completely different from script point of view, but yes, you can basically do that on every script language if you have interpreter. And the good thing on Microsoft, you have the PDB. So you have the PDB file of the JavaScript interpreter, so you can breakpoint on internal function. You have the name. You can guess it's eval or it's this kind of thing, and finally it works. So my script only support pure .NET or PowerShell. So if you have questions, feel free. If you are shy and you don't want to speak in front of everybody, I will be in the room for the rest of the day. Got a question here.
So at times I'll see a PowerShell script download another PowerShell script that's encrypted or obfuscated. And it would be nice if we could stop the execution just before that PowerShell script is executed. I'm wondering if you maybe p-invoke. Have you played with that at all? Is that a good place to pause execution?
Yeah, in my case, I do it in several steps. Firstly, I download every first stage and I make a triage on it. And if I got new PowerShell script, I put it on the system. But I work step by step. I don't make inception of PowerShell because I don't think it would be really stable. And but yeah, I download every downloaded stuff. If it's P file, it's okay. If it's another script, I will analyze it. And if it's data, it's a specific case because it does not really download executable stuff, but data that it unzip or whatever. And in this case, it's not automatic. You need to use classical sandbox or whatever.
I was just wondering if I could use this as some kind of easy way to deobfuscate some PowerShell, and I was wondering if you knew a good spot to pause.
It's not magic, but you can probably work on eval-like stuff. So you can directly get strings before execution. So you can do this kind of thing, yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
I was so clear.
Well, you said you answered the question yourself. And if you're shy, well, you can all see Paul later outside. Okay, thank you very much, Phil.